How's it going today, guys? Black here. And today I'm going to be bringing you guys a gear score farming basically guide. I'm going to be listing off all the locations that you can go to grind gear and get your gear score as high as possible. Right now I'm sitting at about 590 on a lot of my pieces, and I'm getting close to getting to that point where you can't really grind gear out too much without void bent or some type of extreme luck. So I just wanted to list all those locations that I play at and just give you a good idea of where to go. Now I will be making sure to list locations for players who are by themselves, just entry level 60s, as well as players who've been doing it for a while and have a large group, so there's a bit of diversity for everyone. Now with that said, just be aware that some locations that you may go to I don't necessarily go to because I just don't find them to be as efficient as the places listed here. But do know I'm aware of all the locations on the map. That does give you a good chance of getting gear. Now with that said, guys, don't forget to like as well as subscribe, because I will be bringing more New World content as well as many other up and coming MMOs, so stay tuned for that. And I will also have timestamps down in the description, so if you are familiar with some of these locations and you just want to skip ahead or you just want to cut to the chase, I'll have the timestamps below. With that said, let's dive on in. So to get this list started, we're going to be just south of the Mountain Rise outpost at the place called Lonely Climb. More specifically, the Spilaio Caverns, if I said that right. Now this location is best in my opinion for 1 to 3 players. I would come in here if I was more of an entry level player into level 60. The mobs here aren't that difficult to deal with, and even like the bosses you'll see in my gameplay here, I'm fighting these guys with basic gear. Like this is actually gathering gear. And my gear score is about a solid 500, which where you'll probably be close to when you get to this point. And this location has a lot of mobs here that are usually pretty easy to deal with for the most part, even as a solo player. Also, there's a lot of loot drops from this location. Again, you're not going to get the best, but to get yourself started, you're going to be getting a lot of loot. And me, as a higher gear score, I was getting up to 560s from here. So as a starter location, I think this is one of the best, if not the best, for a person who just hit level 600. And if you're by yourself or with a few friends, come here, get yourself some loot, and get geared up. So my next location is going to be called the Spryla Tower, and this is just to the east of the Mountain Home Outpost. And more specifically, you're going to be looking for one NPC. The NPC name is Faye the something, I don't remember her name. But this one NPC is a level 64 elite, white border elite, that from my experience dropped pretty decent gear. Now you can come here with 1-2 players. Again, I tried to keep this to a limit of 3 because the loot table gets a little, messed up. But this is one of the best solo farming locations because you get a lot of access to easy gear as well as an ancient chest. Again, I'm here at the location with my high gear score, and I was able to get items that were about 560. So there's going to be a lot of room for improvement here. And if you don't have someone to play with, or you don't have like a group that you regularly play with and they're offline or whatever, coming here is a great location. Now next on our list is going to be at the southern tip of Edengrone, called the Grasping Summit. And here is another solo farming location that I recently started using. Now the area again is good for 1 to 3 players. Again, I don't like to bring more than 3 players because of the loot table, but as a solo player you should be more than capable of doing it. Again, in this footage I'm with base 500 gear, and as I get to the top, you'll see that the boss is up here. And again, you're looking for one specific mob, and that's what you'll be doing with, like, if you're doing a lot of the solo approach, you're looking for one specific mob. And if you look in the footage here, this mob ended up dropping me legendary components, crafting components, and that's pretty insane considering this is a very entry-level location, I would argue. And there's also 2 ancient coffers. But as you watch the footage a little bit more, I end up killing this boss like 3 or 4 more times just to see if that was just a fluke. And a few kills later, boom, another legendary crafting component. Luck or not, this is still one of the better solo farming locations, and I highly recommend you come here. Now just a little further north, in the heart of Eden Grove, we go to Malevolence. Now this location is best suited, in my opinion, for 3 to 5 players. I would come here solo, but this is going to be one of your better farming locations in my opinion, because it's actually pretty easy to get all the loot. You can start from the bottom and work your way up. And the area have a mountain of elite ancient chests, as well as periodically you'll see throughout the area giant bears. Now they are golden border elite bears, but if you're able to kill them and mine them, you will be able to get earth quintessences, which is a epic grade alchemy component. Now periodically through this area you will find a mountain of loot chests if you're careful enough and paying attention to all the things in within the location. Now for me, I've personally farmed this location with about 3 or 4 friends, and this is one of the better looting locations that I would do regularly. Now the elite chests are on a 24-hour cooldown, so make sure you're aware of that, because you don't want to be coming back here wasting your time unless you really want to get the chest, because there's a lot of chests that will give you like obsidian, sandpaper, and all that good stuff. But Malevolence is probably one of the best locations to get yourself to pretty high gear, and I think you can get yourself pretty reliably to the 550, 560 marks from just Malevolence alone. So now to my next location, and that is Caminus, just south of the Mountain Home Outpost, and this is going to be one of the elite farming zones that you'll be able to find orichalcum. Now within this area it is a little bit lower than Malevolence, but there's a lot of orichalcum, and under the orichalcum nodes you'll find a lot of treasure chests. This is actually one of the first locations I got legendary crafting recipes from, the Frost Fairy Gifts, I believe it's called. And the location generally has pretty good mob density as well as elites. If you're a entry level, I would say about 4 or 5 friends who are a little bit on the weaker side in terms of gear score, I think this would be the perfect location to start getting yourself some fairly good gear, some fairly good loot, and good all around like practice for dealing with some of the tougher bosses, because some of the bosses here, some of the elites here, you'll see in Myrkgard and some of the other farming locations. So next, we're going to be going to the Mangled Heights, located in the west portion of the Great Cleave. Now, besides being one of the more visually appeasing locations in the entire game, it does house a fairly good amount of loot here. Also, you get a bit of orichalcum for all my crafters. Similar to Caminus, there is a lot of locations with like chests under the orky, so make sure you have someone who can mine it, and you'll get a lot of opportunity to get orky here. Now the area is a little bit longer than the average elite dungeon, so you're going to be going on an adventure, which for me this place had to be mentioned because while the mobs are level 60, it has some of the coolest like feels to it. Like I was very impressed by coming here. And at the end, you'll see a massive area with loot chests if you can defeat the boss. Now located on the far west side of Shattered Mountains, I bring you to Ambusti Inferior and Superior. Now this is one of my personal favorite locations for gear grinding, and in my opinion, probably the best. With that said, you absolutely need to be here with a full team spec'd out for their roles. So a tank, a healer, and 3 reliably good DPS, because the mobs here gets pretty insane. You can get away with being a little weaker in the inferior zone, but once you get into the superior zone, your roles need to be very tight and you guys need to play really well. Now, if you're on the mid grade where you're like 530-ish, 540-ish, I would suggest coming in here with maybe 6 or 7 people. As you make your way up to the top of superior, you'll be fighting some pretty tanky mobs that will require very good tanks, as well as a very good healer to keep everyone alive, especially if you're not bringing corruption potions. Now, Ambusti will always be my personal favorite location because you also have extremely high access to orichalcum ore. This location has the absolute most orichalcum in the entire game. So, for my crafters out there who's trying to transition to make game maybe Voidbent, this location is good for you as well as for your team because of the sheer amount of elites and elite chests in this location. Now that we're out of the Shattered Mountains, I bring you down south to Reekwater and the Siren Stand. Now this is going to be another one of your 5+ locations for you to be farming because a lot of the mobs here are 64+, and they tend to be on the stronger side. So you need a proper team built to be able to deal with these guys because they're really strong. You'll also encounter the amphitheater, and this is where you can fight the Siren Queen if you have the required materials. Now you can also get a lot of the materials to fight the Siren Queen from this location in Myrkgard. For me, the Siren Stand is a absolute must location to be to farm once you get to that mid-late game farming area where you're maybe like 550-ish, 540, 550-ish, and then you want to transition into getting some of the better and higher rolls. Also, the area is littered with a lot of elites that has a pretty insanely good loot table. I was here for about an hour and a half farming, and I got a lot of my gear up to 580 from the Siren Stand just alone. And there were a little bit of jewelry that you can get here too, if you want to get some upgrades on your jewelry. So the Siren Stand general area is one of the best locations for a mid to high tier gear score group. Now just north of the town in Myrkgard, I bring you to the Eternal Pool. Now this location is a must location to go to because it is a great location to farm some of the better gear in the game. Here you will encounter a giant bear, some giant vine tentacle monsters, and quite a bit of elites that you can get pretty decent gear drops from. I've gotten some of my best jewelry as well as some of the best healer jewelry from this location. Now you can also fight the Protector here, but be sure that you are prepared. You can get some of the crafting mats from here as well. So just make sure you're very efficient, and I would also urge maybe 5 or more players. The loot drops can be a little scuffed with more than 5 players, but it is a little bit tough, especially on the tank. Now, last but not least, probably the most infamous location, I turn your attention to Myrkgard. Now, Myrkgard is by far the most difficult location in my opinion if you're going to be farming gear. You will need to be sure that you are 550 plus, guaranteed 550 plus, and you come in here with a full decked out tank that can take hits as well as a healer that can deal with a lot of pressure. This is by far the hardest farming zone in the entire game, but in my opinion, it has some of the most rewarding loot tables available. Now, why Myrkgard is probably the best location on the map for farming is, one, it has corrupted portals within Myrkgard that will give you chests that gives you pretty decent gear, as well as whenever you clear the corruption, it will unveil an elite chest under each of the corrupted portals that you can hit once a day. On top of that, the location has a lot of orichalcum for a lot of crafters who want to start getting into the void bin and just like generally heavy armor crafting and mining. And then my personal favorite and probably one of the most farmed things in this area, the priests. There are 2 priest locations within the area, and each of these priests has a pretty insane loot table. To my understanding, you can get some of the best in slot jewelry that's not crafted from this location. So if you're looking to get a lot of good jewelry, a lot of good gear, and a fairly reliable drop rate, this may be the place for you. Now again, remember, I would highly recommend coming in here with 5 to 10 players or a damn good healer. And that's gonna be all for this one, guys. Hopefully this guide really helps you guys out. Whether you're a level 60 just coming into the gear grind, or you're an established player, this guide should give you a good understanding of where you can go to get yourself situated. Now, if the video helped you out, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.